Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Dennett. It is vampires. It's a host of damned souls of telepaths.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. You can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hello everybody, this is Irene Allen, the host of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And tonight here with me again is my co-host, Marky Johnson.
Hello.
You?
So it's been hot over there, huh? Define hot.
Hot, baking hot. I mean it, really baking hot.
Well, I know down in Arizona and around the Phoenix area this week, it was going to be on average of 118 every day.
Oh, come on. No, centigrade, boy. We're not Fahrenheit anymore.
Well, that's... How is that my problem?
For what, 50 years?
Yeah, well, well, you guys are just... you use that nonsensical metric system that nobody can figure out, so...
Okay, it was 30 degrees, I think, or over that in London today. So I don't know what it was here, but it was very, very hot.
Well, very speaking hot. In Fahrenheit, as everybody should, we were up here in the 90s. Pretty much most of last week it was really super hot. Now we're cooled down to the 70s, and it's actually a little chilly today. And then next week we're going back up into the 80s. So
that's what it's been like here. Yesterday, was it yesterday? No, yeah. Yesterday was a bit cool. It was cloudy. No sun at all. It was cloudy. It was muggy, but cloudy. Today, it was beautiful blue skies and red hot. Okay? And tomorrow, it's only going to be 18 degrees. 18. That's not much better than winter.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's really dropping down to 18 degrees, which is, to most people, the seasonal, whatever it is, temperature for this time of the year.
Well, especially for your section of the country. There on the coast, you usually get the worst weather.
Yeah, but, we've had some very, very hot weather, and I'm wondering whether we're going to have another heat wave this year. Whether by July or August it'll be so hot that people will be just dropping all over the place. I don't know. They were worried the other day, on the Queen's birthday, because they had all the soldiers with their bear skins on parade and one thing or another. And they were worried that the heat would get to them, because I've seen this happen. You watch the telly and all these soldiers start flopping around and then drop to the floor, with the heat, while they're doing their thing at the palace. Well, let's change it. I have had my oven cleaned today, people, by the professionals, and it looks brand new. There you go. That's changed it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Looks like a new oven. These people are real professionals.
Well, why didn't you clean it yourself?
I do. I wipe it around every time I use it, but I only use it once a week, Mark. A Sunday. Brian uses it on a Sunday. That's about it. I don't even know how to switch the bloody thing on.
Well, because you burn water.
I try to use it like a microwave. I've put microwave stuff in there before now, and God, that's melted.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord. All right, well, why don't we get to talking about something more paranormal based? How's that?
Yes, go on then.
All right. So we want to introduce our guest, who's a return guest to our program. He's been with us a couple of different times now. He's a UFO investigator and also investigating the paranormal since 1986. And he's written the author of 26 books and more than 100 articles on UFOs and the paranormal. So we want to welcome Preston Dennett to the program. How are you tonight, Preston?
I'm good. Thanks, Mark. Hi, Irene.
Hi, yes, sweetie. Preston, 26 books. It's 26 books now you've written?
It's around there. I think it might be up to 29. I'm beginning to lose count, actually.
And I'm having trouble on my fourth. God, I'm struggling with that one. 29 books. Well, I admire you. You are a writer. You're an author.
I don't know who's written more, Preston or Nick Redfern.
Yeah, we're in a race. We're pretty much neck and neck, I think. I don't know.
I always tease Nick that, he writes a new book every time he goes to the loo and sits down and just takes a pad and paper with him, comes out with a new book.
Hey, if you enjoy it, it's not work.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
This is it. I think you have got to enjoy it, This is why it's taken me so long struggling through 4 books. Because I'm just lazy. I started with all the enthusiasm and everything, and then it starts to wane, and then I struggle. And then I put it down for a few years and then pick it up again. I'm not made for writing books. But then I get these ideas. I want to write a book on this, and I get the enthusiasm back again, and up comes, I start up the computer and off I go again.
Yeah, I know what that's like. I have to be careful because the middle is hard. I call it the muddle.
Oh, yeah. That's where I come unstuck. I came unstuck with that one on the Spy in Paris, one I'm soon to put out. And I got to the middle and I stopped for 2 years. I literally did stop for 2 years. I completely could not go any further. I had a brain block. That was it. And I just lost it. And then, one day the thing came again, the feeling to pick it up and start, and I sailed through it. I just picked it up, went to where I left off and sailed through. I just needed that 2-year break. That's what I needed.
Yeah, I just pushed through the muddle and then boom, I'm off.
Yeah.
Well,
let me ask Preston, do you have a day job, or are you lucky enough to write full time?
No, I do have a day job, and until recently it was full time. Now it's part time, so I'm super happy. I get to sleep late, which is something I missed for 35 years. So I'm much happier working part time actually.
So I work from home. I've been virtual before COVID, so with my day job. So unless I have to get up early to go to the gym on those days, I get to sleep in a bit before I have to start. So I get lucky there. So
I have to get up early in the morning to feed the dogs.
Oh, yeah, don't trust me. My dog gets me up early to feed her, and then I go right back to bed.
Yeah?
Yep.
Oh, you can't do that in my house. 6:30 I'm up. They want to be fed. They want to go out. Then Gertie wants to play football in the garden.
So you're stuck no matter what.
I'm stuck, yeah. And by that time, I'm wide awake. So after we've had a game of football at 7 o'clock in the morning.
So Preston, you have your brand new book out. In fact, when did it come out? It just came out this last month, called Wondrous 25 UFO Encounters.
No, True UFO
Encounters. My apologies. I missed a word.
Mm-hmm.
Brand new.
I'm having my own cognitive decline, or I just call it, I suffer from CRS.
Being a twit?
No. You know what CRS is, Preston?
No.
Can't remember shit.
Being a twit.
And the older I get, the more I
Wondrous.
suffer from it.
So the book's called Wondrous, 25 True UFO Encounters.
Now,
by Preston Dennett.
Now
Available on Amazon. Just get that one in.
Yep. Out on Amazon, on Kindle, and paperback.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how long did it take you to compile all of these stories, and how did you go about obtaining them? Because these are all about different people who have had their own encounters with UFOs, aliens, and all sorts of other high strangeness.
Oh, that's the long part. It takes years. I'm going to say some of them reach back 5 years. Some are relatively more recently acquired, I should say. But I've been sitting on a few of these for a while. They just didn't have room in some of my other books. It's the research that takes a long time.
So, Preston, while you've been researching this book, you've been writing other books.
Oh,
you are amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay. Don't you think, Mark? Can you see me doing that?
If you were doing that, we'd be done by now.
Yeah, and I'll have 29 books at my belt.
So with these encounters, these are people who've reached out to you and sent you their stories based off of reading your other books, or were there other ways that you collected these stories?
Yep, some definitely reached out to me, having picked up my books, or some had encounters and were searching for information, came across my website. Some people hear me on radio shows or podcasts like yours, or all different ways. I mean, people at work. I get referrals from friends and family and coworkers. All kinds of different ways. Some I sought out myself because I heard their story on perhaps a UFO forum, a website, or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. Many different ways, actually. So one lady, she saw me on TV doing research on USOs, so that's how she contacted me.
USOs.
Yeah,
underwater.
Do you want to explain that just for the listeners so that they know?
Yeah, a USO is an unidentified submersible object. You can't call it a UFO. It's not flying. It's swinging. So we call it an unidentified submersible object.
Okay. Yeah. Because then, you don't hear of them so much. Maybe in your world, in the world of UFOs and one thing or another, or anyone that's into that, yes, they'll hear it practically every day. But for the normal person, like the housewife in the kitchen, this is a new one. They do go underwater.
But if you think about it, the USOs have been around for a very long time and have been recorded, including Christopher Columbus on his journey to the Americas, his first journey, encountered USOs. They were under the water. Then I think they came out of the water and were hovering in the air, these lights. And he recorded them in his captain's log.
Don't you remember the last time I was in Italy?
No.
Where I am in Italy, up in the mountains, you can see right across the Mediterranean. And I stood there early hours of the morning, out on the balcony, watching these lights going in and out of the water. Literally going up into the sky, then diving down into the water again. And they were not fishing boats, people, I can tell you.
Well, being the fact that they were going up into the sky, I would hope not.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely a thing. Our oceans, lakes, too, rivers, you name it.
Yeah, why do you think that is? What do you think the attraction is? Because when I first heard about it years ago, somebody told me, I asked why the water? And they said that because they're taking up water.
I do know a few cases like that. I'm not sure that's the draw or the attraction there. I think, honestly, it's because they can. They can go in and out of the water easily and hide there, do whatever they want to do without any prying eyes.
Yeah, they're not seen so easily, are they?
Exactly.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, Mark.
Okay.
Go on.
Yeah, well, and that's the funny thing. USOs and UFOs are very interchangeable once one exits the water, but, a lot of theories are that, they're under the water. There are supposed to be underwater bases. It's very easy for them to hide down there because, let's face it, we don't go down more than a couple 100 feet in the oceans, and the oceans are still the biggest unexplored area of our planet. So who knows what's really down there?
Lots of USOs. That's what's down there.
Yeah.
not a few, a lot.
You're going to have people swimming in the sea now wondering what's down there, I know next time I swim out quite deep into the sea, I'm going to think, well, there's not just fishes down there, girl. Better get back before I'm abducted.
Yeah, I started getting cases of USOs as soon as I started doing research.
Did you?
And, I ended up writing a whole book about activity off the Southern California coast here because I've got 150 reports now.
Of actual underwater craft? Because I know there's the famous, the newly released military Navy footage off the Catalina coast with the Nimitz, the Tic Tac UFO, but that was strictly an aerial phenomenon.
Nope, that actually was under the water as well.
It was.
More information is coming out about that. They did see craft under the water as well. And it doesn't surprise me a bit because this is the area. It's one of the top producers in the world. No kidding. Of USOs.
But off the California coast?
Yep. Catalina Island is probably the best vantage point. But all around that area, from Santa Barbara, Channel Islands on the north end, sweeping down through, past Los Angeles down to really Santa Clemente. Big stretch of ocean there, which is very active.
Now, here's what
I know Russian submarines have actually seen stuff they can't explain under the water.
Well, Russian subs, I'm pretty sure a lot of American subs.
Yeah, well, it's more than likely English as well, but they don't say anything.
Yeah. Well, what's ironic is, Preston, you have grown up and currently live in my old stomping grounds up there in the San Fernando Valley, around the Reseda area, where I was originally from Sylmar, and I lived in Reseda for a while, and Van Nuys, and before I moved out here to New Jersey. But, I know a lot of the areas that you talk about. In fact, I believe in your book, you have a couple of stories based on your own family's experiences.
That's right. That's how I started. Yeah. I couldn't believe a lot of people in my own family were having pretty dramatic encounters. That's what got me involved. Yeah.
Now, that's what irritates me because I, of course, have always wanted to see one. And I lived out there for 35 years and never saw a damn thing. Never had any experiences like that. And although my brother, he saw a few. I think I mentioned the story before when he was working up at Six Flags Magic Mountain once back in the 80s. We both worked there at the time, and he was working out on this lake that they used for a boat show. It was after hours at night, and he was watching like 2 or 3 objects, and they were like circling around each other as they were all moving very fast across the sky, almost like doing a dance. It was definitely not a terrestrial craft.
Yeah, I've seen that out here. It's like they're playing with each other.
Yeah, exactly, like playing tag.
And then they all merge into one of them. It's like they all merge into out here. That's what it looked like over the hill. as if there was one that was more or less more stationary, where the others were zooming around as if they were teasing it, and then they suddenly merged into it.
Well,
and it took off.
That is what fascinates me about the phenomenon, because, you know, most people, when you mention the word UFO, they automatically think of a metal nuts and bolts craft piloted by aliens. And a lot of times what people, are seeing are these lights, blobs of lights that change shape. They split into multiple different shapes and come back together, and it's definitely not acting like something physical, almost like it's like an intelligent energy.
Yep, until it lands, and then you see that it is in fact physical. They're very technologically advanced. They can do stuff that seems interdimensional. I mean, it is, to a certain extent, what we would perceive as interdimensional. But these are metallic craft. I think most of what people are seeing are alien craft piloted by biological beings like us.
Have you seen anything, Preston?
Yeah, I sure have. And more than once. Not until I started researching. Never saw anything growing up. And I lived in a pretty active area. I mean, in the Santa Monica Mountains, where there's a whole lot of activity. But never saw anything.
And as soon as you started taking an interest, they started showing.
Yep, tables turned. I don't think that's a coincidence, actually. I started looking at other UFO researchers, and this is definitely a thing. They will investigate you if you investigate them.
Yeah, that's why I ignore them when I'm out there. I don't want them coming in my house, you know. Well, nobody's taking me.
It's what's the old saying? Who watches the watchers? You know, or I think it was Nietzsche who said, "When you stare into the abyss stares back." It's a way of, you know, if something is being observed, especially with these things, they know it, and then they start paying attention back at you. Or in a lot of cases, especially people who have undergone hypnotic regression, turns out that they've been having experiences for years. Maybe something triggers it. They'll have one sighting, they think it's their first, and then they start realizing they've been having experiences since childhood.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not uncommon. People are good at denial, though.
Well,
Preston, do you believe aliens walk amongst us?
Yeah, I sure do. Because there's a lot of cases out there. Remember, some of these guys look just like us, but there are cases where ETs are seen in places you would not expect. And this comes from a number of different researchers. I've got some of my own cases, but I know Bud Hopkins had a case which really surprised me. A lady saw a gray alien on a subway. No one else seemed to notice it, but she saw it. Mm-hmm. I know of other cases like that. There's a very famous case which took place in Richland Center, Wisconsin, with John Hunter Gray and his son. They were taken on board a craft, but immediately before that, they were at the gas station and saw a very peculiar character, a little short guy with beady eyes, right next to them, staring at them. He had dark sunglasses on, or a fisherman's cap, pretty much all covered up, and followed them all the way to the abduction site.
What I've found is there's always something that doesn't fit. Well, you know, literally doesn't fit right.
Whitley Strieber, he mentioned in his follow-up book to Communion, Transformation, he talked about how, I think it was his publisher, was in a bookstore not long after Communion was published. And of course, he walks in the bookstore and he goes over to take a look at the display and, you know, to see how the book is selling. And he sees these two people and they're dressed a little weird. And it's obvious they're like wearing wigs and sunglasses. And they're kind of like hovering there talking amongst themselves. And he actually overheard their conversation as they're flipping through the book. And he goes, "Oh no, he's got this part all wrong." And so he approached them and he said, hi, I'm the publisher. What is it about the book that you found wrong? And they just turned and stared at him. And he said he just got such an uncomfortable feeling and he walked away, but he couldn't help but notice they had these very large slanted eyes, the almond-shaped eyes, and a gray complexion, and they were like disguised grays.
Yep, I remember that. Bruce Lee was the guy's name.
Yes.
And he said their eyes were twice the size of a normal human's, not human.
Yep.
So yeah, they are among us.
Yeah, but do you think they're they don't always show with the almond eyes and things like that. They also have eyes, or they show sometimes with eyes like ours. Yeah,
I mean, the Greys do have the ability to put out screen memories. There's a case which took place in Florida where a lady was seduced by a very handsome man at a gas station, and says she doesn't normally pick up strangers, but he was
that never happens to me. That doesn't happen to me. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, she said he was very attractive. Blonde hair, blue eyes, muscular. Took him home, started getting intimate with him, and realized at one point this was not who he appeared to be. He was actually a Grey.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, I read of, and Dr. John Mack's works, there are a few of his cases where he mentioned people with abductions. They even abduction cases, beautiful, like a guy is abducted and this beautiful woman will come in and pretty much get on top of him, have sex, and then just get up and leave. But then at the end, they realize it's not a human.
Yeah. I think sometimes they probably are human, because I've looked at a lot of these cases. But I don't know. They do have our genetic material. They've been collecting it for a long time.
Human or hybrids.
I've often been told I'm an alien. Do you think I'm an alien, Mark?
Do you really want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Well, technically, for an American, you are.
And if you came over here, you'd be an illegal alien. Actually, that just reminds me, if you remember the 80s movie, the cartoon based on the magazine Heavy Metal. Did you ever see that movie?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. There's that one funny bit where they're dragging this alien off, and he goes, "No, I have my passport. And he goes, it's the joke is he's an illegal alien. He's being dragged out of a police station. It was kind of funny anyway. So some of these cases in your book, there were a couple that really stood out, especially the very first story. I mean, obviously we're not going to cover everything because we want people to read the book, but I'd like to talk about a couple of these cases. The first one being the woman out for her morning jog and what she saw.
Yeah, I love this case. I call her Eleanor. She's a teacher, really neat lady, funny, smart, and loves to go jogging at 4:30 a.m. I don't know how she does that. I could never get up that early, but she enjoys it. She was out jogging near her home in O'Fallon, Illinois. This is a pretty rural area, with her dog, and jogging down her street, passes another street, going up another street, and coming up to a T intersection, and sees what looks like a man on stilts walking down the center of the road. Of course, this is very early in the morning. It's still dark, and it's a pretty busy street during the day, but no one's on it right now. Her dog noticed it first, and she looked up expecting to see a fox or a deer or something, which wasn't unusual. There'd be wildlife out at that hour. But no, this was a man on stilts, it looked like, until it walks under the streetlight right there on the corner. And she got a jolt. This was not a man on stilts. This was a 15-foot tall praying mantis humanoid, I guess you'd call it, E.T. And it was just booking down the road pretty fast, 10-foot strides, gray in color, very long stick-like limbs. Did not appear to notice her, she said. Its head was bent down and it was scanning the road back and forth, as if it had dropped something and was searching for it. And just continued on down the road pretty fast. And you know what she does? She did not turn around and run home. She ran after this thing.
She didn't.
Yeah.
Mind you, I would have gone after it with some bug spray. Did she really run after it?
Yeah, she sure did. It was about 100 feet away from her, and she took off running after it. And watched it. You know, she got to the intersection there, and it was still moving down the road pretty quickly, and she watched it for a few more moments, not long, maybe a minute, and it turned off into a cornfield there. She ran up to where it turned off, and there was no evidence of it. And
did the dog react to it?
Didn't bark, just kind of stared at it. But yeah, the dog saw it first, so she knows it wasn't her imagination. I mean, she'd never seen anything like this. Actually, she's contacted me because she wanted to know, if I had heard of anything like this. She found another account in one of my other books where a gentleman, a Navy medic, actually saw a 15-foot tall praying mantis. So I asked her, I'm like, what's in this area? Why? Why would a mantis be there? She says, I don't know. There's nothing around here. It's just cornfields and farms, and there's a school. But she said, there is one thing, and it definitely made my ears prick up when she said it. She lives about 6 miles away from Scott Air Force Base.
Oh, Scott Air Force Base.
Yep. And
how did she feel after she saw it? Obviously she wasn't frightened because she went after it, but when she actually got back and realized what she'd seen, did it shake her up? Or?
Yeah, she was very puzzled, very confused, wasn't quite sure what to make of it, didn't know what to do with it. She told her family. They were very supportive, otherwise kept it completely secret for a long time. Started doing research and realized that other people had seen things like this. But mostly people describe like 9 feet tall on the high end. So it's definitely 15 feet tall. And she knows because she measured against the street light.
Damn.
Gosh.
Now, I know the mantis type of aliens have been reported in like hundreds of cases, UFO and abduction cases. Usually they seem to be the ones in charge. Definitely, or at least in charge of the short grays, which, with all the descriptions of different aliens, there's short grays. Taller grays seem to be the next step up. And then there's the mantis beings, which seem to be a step up above from that. The only curious thing I've never really understood is getting a good description of these mantis beings. I understand the head has the triangular shape, but what else makes it look like a mantis? Does it look like a mantis in terms of the long curved arms or the way the legs are jointed, or, what is similar and what is different from what we would think of as a praying mantis?
Yeah, it always kind of puzzles me that, like, a mantis, okay, why not a giant ladybug or something? There's a lot of different insects. But yeah, people describe it. Some will say it looks like a grasshopper. I'm thinking those are probably similar or the same. I don't know. But she described, I think what clinched it for her was the front arms, which were very short and kind of curled to sort of placed on the front of the body, curled forward like a dog begging, sort of. Like you see a mantis do.
God, can you imagine if its tongue had come out?
I don't know if
like mantis. She's gone.
Mantises don't have tongues. I think you're thinking of the wrong.
Yes, they do. Something comes out. What are those creatures up in trees then that have a long tongue that comes out and gets to fly?
Frogs.
Chameleons.
Geckos.
Oh, I'll look it up later. But, while we're on the bug spray, I see you've got another one.
Yeah.
A young dentist.
Dental assistant?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was an
It's
interesting
another
case.
one for the bug spray.
She said that they looked like insects. These were grays, but people have described them as looking very much like humanoid ants. And that's what her first impression was. These large, dark eyes, hairless heads, very pale, maggoty-like skin, and surrounding her bed. She had just had a baby. This is definitely something I see quite a bit. People will be perhaps 8-9 months pregnant or have just had their child, and this is when the Greys show up. They're very interested in human reproduction. And they showed up in her apartment in New York City. Not a place you would think that they would appear, but they can appear anywhere.
And yet I've heard of...
For the young mothers out there, don't worry, don't fret. This is very, very rare.
But the abductions in New York City and Manhattan, I've heard of that before. People have actually witnessed a UFO floating somebody out their apartment window into a UFO in the past. But it goes to show you that these things can happen anywhere, and half the time people don't pay attention. They either don't pay attention, especially in this day and age when everybody's faces are plastered to their cell phones and nobody's looking up. But they seem to have the ability to make everybody just like look away. What's Douglas Adams in one of his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy sequels talks about there's a special weapon or ray used to get people to like turn away and forget things. It's called Somebody Else's Problem. It was it was a funny way of saying,
that was
like,
the Men in Black, wasn't it? The movie.
No, it
They've
was
got one of them.
No, it was this Douglas Adams. He talked about there. It was for fun. It was funny, of course. It's a joke, but yeah, it's a ray they use to make people look away and not want to pay attention to it because they figure it's somebody else's problem, not theirs.
Yeah. Do you think that these are all different species of aliens? The praying mantis, the bugs, and the greys, or do you think it's all one species that's just getting it wrong and trying to disguise themselves as what they see as something moving around on the earth?
Different species.
But they get it wrong because, you're 15-foot mantis.
No, I mean, there's definitely wide variation of grays. It's mostly what I get is some type of gray, but I don't think all grays are necessarily the same species because you got short little ones, 3 foot tall. You have ones that are closer to 5 or 6 feet tall. You have, of course, hybrids. Praying mantis is completely different, human looking, and really there's just a catch-all category of what I would call strange humanoids, 10 foot tall up to, and very hard to categorize.
I remember when I was younger, before the term greys became really popular, and I'm pretty old, Preston, so don't worry about it. But they were called little green men. My father's talked about a roundabout in Surrey where people would go underneath the roundabout to cross the road. And they've been seen under there. Someone actually stopped their car, looked over the parapet to the down to where people, walked underneath, and saw little green men running around.
Yep, I've heard of all different colors. It's not just gray. Yellow, tan, blue-skinned. Actually, there's these little blue beings, which are fairly common. Squashed little faces.
Yeah,
beady eyes.
Whitley, again,
50 years ago, it was green in this country. They were very popular, little green men.
Well, yeah, that was the running joke, in the media for the longest time. If somebody talk about flying UFOs or flying saucers, they talk about little green men. But the blue ones, again, I refer to Whitley Strieber a lot, but he even mentioned in his encounters dealing with the squash-faced blue humanoids.
Yep, I've got a case like that in the book. It's actually my sister-in-law. one of my family members. She saw little blue guys, squashed faces. There's a illustration in the book, and I've showed it to other contactees, and they're like, "Yep, that's accurate." My sister-in-law Kisara, she's the one who did the cover and illustrated several of the stories in the book.
I've seen in my garden, like, I don't know how to explain them. How do you explain those things that I could see through, Mark, that kind of vibrated?
The two transparent beings?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something that's in Irene's autobiography book, Life Among the Spirits, available on Kindle and Amazon.
On Amazon.
But you mentioned she saw these two fairly large, one bigger, one smaller beings. Think of the movie Predator. The outlines, the shimmering outlines, and you could see through it.
He didn't have a body like Predator, though.
No,
he's quite
but
slim, isn't he, with muscles? But these things were.
But
stocky.
the effect is what I'm talking about. Like it's a like a cloaking device. Yeah, it shimmers a little bit. If it stood still, you probably wouldn't see it. But they moved and interacted with her in her garden. Of course, she lives in UFO Highway there in Wales, so.
The strange thing about it was I let the dogs out for their last wee of the night. They ran off down the garden. And when they come back up, they have to come onto the patio to come into the back door. I was standing at the back door and I could see this thing shimmering, coming towards me. The dog stood at the far end of the patio, and that's 40 foot away, and growled. Their heckles went up and growled, and I called them, tried to get them to come to me. They would not come any further because of this thing.
But
they saw it as well.
But then one of them approached you, didn't it?
That was the second one.
I thought
that was the second one. That stood about 3 foot in front of me.
But wasn't
3 foot in front of me?
Unless I'm confusing stories, because I know you saw them twice. Wasn't in the first one the smaller one tried approaching you, and you like kind of put your hand up and said like?
That's right. I put my hand up in the F off. Palm up.
Yeah, say don't even think of it, mate. and it backed away.
Yeah, and that went backwards. It didn't turn around. It was still facing me and went backwards away from me. And then just sort of disappeared. The second one was 2 years after that. And it was taller. Whether it was the same one and it got grown up a little bit, I don't know. But that's the one the dogs saw. And that got to 2 to 3 foot in front of me. And I didn't tell it to F off.
But you felt like you also received a kind of a download of information from it.
Yeah. Which maybe one day will come out. I don't know.
They're probably saying hi, because they haven't seen you in a while because you are an alien.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You asked earlier. I don't think I got to answer you. Oh yeah,
the truth is out.
She's totally an alien.
I am an alien, yes. I've been asked by many, many people.
She's an alien, a grandmother, a pensioner.
Are you of this world, Irene? No. But, they were interesting experiences. And, it really didn't worry me. Not to that extent. I came indoors and sort of thought, oh, crap. What have I just seen? Sort of thing. But it doesn't really worry me that much. I see so much stuff going on out there, Mark. Being in the countryside.
You have to tell me more about it. But Preston, let me ask you, with your sister-in-law and her experiences, and again, you've had experiences, other family members have had experiences. Do you feel like this has possibly been running in your family for a lot longer than you realize?
I certainly wonder about it. I know when I figured out this was going on, I examined my own past. I'm like, do I have any strange incidents that stand out? And couldn't really find any. And my parents, I never had a chance to ask my mother, but my father denied it, never believed in any of this. My grandparents have been deceased for since I was a little baby. So I don't know. I've talked to some cousins and stuff. They think I'm crazy. But both my nephews have had encounters, one with a humanoid. So I think it probably is within our family, like it's tracking other families.
Well, they seem to follow genetic lines. And and I think it's also they're manipulating genetic lines too, which is when people have these offspring, and then suddenly they wake up and they're no longer pregnant, like they've never been pregnant, and then later on they're shown a hybrid baby during an abduction experience. But then there are other people. The one new theory right now is people who are Rh negative blood are possibly human hybrids. Gee, is that you, Irene?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jamie too.
Well, considering what goes on with both of you, that doesn't surprise me. But it seems like these beings have been manipulating the human genome for centuries, if not millennia, in one form or another, based on old stories, even, biblical stories, or even going all the way back to Sumerian times, Egyptian times, all these stories of the gods.
Why are they doing it? Why do they want to do it? Do you know, Preston, why they would want to do this? Is it because they can?
I don't know. They do seem to be obsessed with humans, obsessed with all things of Earth. I think the evidence is pretty good, although circumstantial, that they've been manipulating genetics for millennia. How many indigenous cultures talk about sky beings and being taught by beings from the sky, or mating with the gods and all this kind of thing. And we have the hybrid phenomena going on now. I think this is something that's been going on for a very long time, and maybe they're just they're part of us. Maybe our relationship is much closer than we realize. And if there are human-looking ETs, right? So, what does that say about us? Who we are? Did we even evolve on this planet? I'm not so sure we did.
I think you're right. I definitely think you're right. I see here you also wrote about a young child greeted by a UFO with telepathic message meant only for her. That was by a UFO. I got the same thing from these beings out in the garden. It was all like telepathy. Like we communicated, but through telepathy. So, what was that about?
Yeah, this is a very interesting case. This took place in Maine, actually. And Debbie is her name. She was 5 years old. Wakes up one summer morning around 6 a.m.
She's at that age. She can't really have made this up, could she? At that age.
No, I don't think so. But she knew what it was. As soon as she saw this thing outside her window, it was a traditional flying saucer, grayish metal. It was a bright sunny day. She could see the sun reflecting off of it. It was clearly metal. It had a perfectly smooth surface, no portholes or anything, totally silent. And as soon as she sees it, she got this feeling of intense longing. She started crying and saying, "Take me with you. I don't belong here. This isn't my home. Take me with you." And the craft responded. She doesn't quite remember how. It flashed lights or something, or it dipped and moved. It did something. But after a short, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, it darted away. And it came back when she was about 17 years old.
Did it?
Yep, sure did. And she had moved, I think it was to Oregon. Yeah, Portland, Oregon. And it was the same craft, 50 feet above her. Had banks of lights on it this time. And she actually spoke to it, said, "Hi, my name's Debbie. I know what you are. I'm not sure who you are. I wish you peace and joy. I mean you no harm. and they communicated back telepathically to her very clearly in English and said, "Sister, we know of you. We have been watching you. We wish you peace and joy. We mean you no harm, and we will see you again."
Oh, that's nice. That is nice. You also write about a commercial jet where a couple saw a silver disc flying. Now that really resonates with me.
But before we get into that, Irene,
I saw so many strange things out there in the sky as we were going along.
Well, but before we get into that one, I wanted to comment on that last case, because again, something dealing with both Dr. John Mack and even Dolores Cannon in their regression therapies for UFO contactees. There were several cases where people admit, under hypnosis, that if you, and this is where it gets weird for a lot of people, if you believe in the idea of reincarnation, or our souls, we come into these bodies and live out our lives, but that some of these people have spirits or souls that are actually from extraterrestrials. They have agreed to come in and incarnate in a human body for whatever their purpose is for that lifetime. So some of these people who feel like they don't belong here, or maybe they think they'll look up in the sky and see like the Pleiades or the Orion constellation, and they feel like that's their home, and they don't feel like they belong on this planet. It could be in those situations that maybe that's where they're from before this lifetime, before they agreed to come in to have this experience or be a part of whatever it is they're supposed to be a part of. But like the rest of us, we come in with that amnesia, and we don't remember most everything. Like, we'll have feelings, but if they tap down into it either through hypnotic regression or through meditation, a lot of those memories can start to come out.
Yep, and that would certainly explain why they're so interested in us, because we are them and they are us. And that's the message many contactees get. Well, but you are one of us.
Well, the one message that I've heard...
that one before, haven't you, Mark?
Well, yeah, and one message I've heard a lot about Earth. Irene, you asked earlier, well, what's their purpose with us? What's going on here? And everything that I've read and heard in talking with experiencers and reading about other people's experiences, the fact that the Earth, our reality isn't what we think it is. It's not like going in to work and working and paying taxes and having family and then dying, and that's all there is to life. There's a purpose for us being here. In most cases, again, I'll quote Whitley Strieber. When he asked, what is the Earth? He was told it's a school. And other abductees have been told the same thing, which makes sense in a way if you, again, think about the concept of reincarnation, that we come here to learn lessons over many different lifetimes. And possibly, we're here to learn different concepts and whatnot in order to advance the human race as we go along. That's a very watered down version of it, but again, if some people they're actually incarnations from these ET races, it's quite possible. Like I think you are, Irene.
Yeah. I have heard that. I don't know if it's a public school or a private school, but it's a rough school.
Well, I failed it many times, I tell you.
The school of hard knocks. Oh, good Lord. Anyway, Irene, finish. You were asking about the married couple on the commercial jet?
Oh, yeah, I was asking about that one because I've seen, especially on one particular trip over to Italy, I saw many things right off in the distance that I couldn't answer, and they were not aircraft.
Yeah. This was a guy he was co-hosting a podcast and says, "Please stay on the line. I really want to tell you what happened to me." This was mid 1990s. He's flying with his ex-wife, over Nevada, perhaps not far from Area 51, by the way. But at any rate, he's got a window seat. His wife is a stewardess. She's working on this flight. And suddenly there's this metallic saucer right outside the plane. I mean, right next to it.
What, a big one or a small one? Because some of them are as big as a football pitch, aren't they?
He said it was not terribly large, about 40 feet in length. Very, very smooth, no seams, no windows, but shiny, shiny metallic. And he got a message from it. Basically, they said it was powered by electromagnetism. He got this very clear impression. That fascinated me because this is something I've heard from other people who've had really close-up sightings. And this was right. I mean,
that's what I'm picking up on, that thing we were talking about earlier, Mark. Sorry.
Yep.
Carry on.
Yeah, it was just a few feet just under the right wing. So this is not something off in the distance at all. I mean, everyone.
Did anyone else on the flight see it, or was it just him?
That was his first thought. It was there for just a few seconds. He called his wife. She saw it, and it darted off, and no one else seemed to see it. But she is a flight attendant working on that flight, so he asked her to ask the pilots if they saw it. And she agreed. And so after they landed and he's waiting for her, finally she comes out after, finishing up her job. She said, yeah, she talked to the pilots and they did see it. And they said that they've had a number of similar sightings, but they never, ever report them.
No,
never.
They don't want to lose their job.
Yep. But this is a sighting that totally affected him deeply. I mean, it totally made him believe in UFOs, of course, but really kind of expanded his worldview in a big way.
Well, see, there are a lot of experiencers who have very spiritual, almost experiences when they have these encounters. With the receiving the messages telepathically, whether it's just telling them, we're here for you, we'll visit you again, you're one of us, to, predictions about what's going to happen in the future. But they seem to be reacting with us very much on a spiritual level.
Yep, I totally agree. There's a very strong spiritual aspect to this. This is one of their main agendas, for sure. Yes, they physically examine people, often heal them. Got many, many cases of that. They will take you to the engine room, tell you how it works. They'll take you to the control room, even allow some people to fly the craft, teach them. But there's a very strong spiritual aspect to this, particularly with people who have extensive encounters. If they're taken on board, they come away spiritually enlightened to some degree, very interested in perhaps Reiki or hands-on healing, or they start doing channeling, they start having clairvoyance, start having out-of-body experiences. This is one of their agendas, to wake us up to our own spiritual abilities.
Yeah, but then there's also the opposite. There are the nightmare stories as well, aren't they? Where they've been examined and probed and things have been put into them.
But here's the thing on that. And again, I'm not saying this is always the case. I mean, there are... I do feel that we're being visited by a number of different races, and some of them, I believe, are hostile, or they at the very least don't have our best interests at heart. There's multiple agendas going on, and some people have had horrifying experiences, threatening experiences. Other people who start off having terrifying experiences, but then over time it starts to change, and they start to grow into it, and they start realizing that it is very much a spiritual experience. Now, they've still had, the rectal probes or scoops of flesh taken out of them, or, taken ova from women and sperm from men, and, they've been experimented on, and yet at the same time, and people are very afraid when this is happening. They're out of their minds with terror. And yet, if they are multiple abductees and they remember it, it changes. There's a shift that happens with a lot of people over that period of time. Again, I keep going back to Whitley Strieber just because I've, talked with Whitley on several occasions. And with his story in the beginning, I mean, he was absolutely terrified. He had no idea who these beings were. But if you read his books over the last 20 years or so, the relationship has changed. And he has the implant in his ear now that's been there for years, and it's only in the last couple of years he's actually learned how to use it and switch it on, and it connects him with them. And there's more of a spiritual type of relationship that goes on. Other people who have had spiritual growth and healing properties, you mentioned in one of these, one of your cases about someone who was healed, and there are other cases of people who have healed, like you said, they get into Reiki and they have healing powers. I knew of one abductee, I can't say their name, but they started being able to do hands-on healing of people after a few years of their abduction experiences. So
yeah, not uncommon. This is what you're talking about is exactly what I found. It can be very scary, and often is in the beginning. People describe, night terrors as little kids, PTSD. It can be the worst I hear, honestly, is the physical exam, which can be not only traumatizing but occasionally painful. But people who don't have a strong fear response, people who get over their fear, that's when things really turn around 180 degrees. And I always ask people, do you think these guys are evil? Are they out to hurt you? And almost nobody will say that. I have pretty much zero accounts of what I would call sadistic behavior, where they want to hurt people, want to scare them, enjoy inflicting pain. I don't have any of that.
But
so I don't.
There are a few cases, though. There's Terry Lovelace, who we had on the program a couple months ago. I don't know if you ever read his book, Incident at Devil's Den. And
yep, I did.
The encounter that he and his friend from the military had on top of the mountain, where they both came back badly burned, dehydrated. They were in pain for days. They couldn't. Their eyes were hurting. They went to the hospital. They had severe burns, and they were physically harmed in one way. And yet, again, Terry, over time, especially crowning in his second book, which just came out, The Reckoning, he starts remembering that he's had experiences most of his life, and most of which have been positive. And again, it starts getting into that little bit of that spiritual aspect of it. But yet that one incident, they had very negative experiences. But if you want to get into negative experiences, I'm going to point out what's happening on a couple of different locations in the Southwest, where you have in Utah, there's the Skinwalker Ranch, which is right now, it was always shrouded in mystery until last year when that history television show came out, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And I don't know if you watched that, but that's like one of my guilty pleasures right now. But between what was detailed in the book written by the former NIDS scientist and George Knapp, and what they're experiencing now, there is, if not absolutely hostile negative, something that's just that has a trickster quality that seems to be messing with people's minds, hiding things, taking like equipment and hiding it like a big 50-pound post holer, and they can't find it. Next thing they know, it's up in a tree. To being exposed to very high levels of very dangerous radiation. On the show, one of the scientists got exposed to very high levels of gamma radiation to the point where he had to go to the hospital. He had burns on his hands and face. And that's one of the things that they're currently exploring in that show. But some of the accounts that the well, they call them the Gorman family in the books. It's actually what's the family's real name? I'm forgetting right now. Some of the experiences they had were very terrifying, between cattle mutilations to these balls of light that killed 3 of his dogs. Actually seemed to tease the dogs, leading them into the woods, and then all of a sudden they started screaming, and then he goes out the next day and finds 3, smoldering piles where the dogs used to be. So there is a negative aspect to it. John Edmonds down at the Stardust Ranch he's been there almost 30 years, and he's had nothing but negative encounters with whatever it is that's under his ranch. A lot of the activity is very similar to the Skinwalker Ranch, but in my opinion, it's much worse compared to what he and his wife have gone through.
Yep. Well, there's the bell curve for sure. It's not all, puppies and lollipops by any means. They're not all our space brothers. It's a wide universe. We have evil people here on Earth. I think there's evil aliens for sure. I mean, that makes total sense.
But you also hear about good and bad in almost similar species. Like there are good and bad grays. People have had good experiences with grays. People have had horrible experiences with grays. John Edmonds has been having nothing but horrible experiences with them. The same thing goes with the reptilians. Reptilians get a really bad rap as the quote-unquote evil race supposedly controlling humanity, according to some researchers. They're the ones responsible for us being kind of in the mess we're in right now. But yet there are other people that have had very positive encounters with reptilians. So you're right. It's the same with people. Human beings are good and bad people. There are good and bad aliens. And there's also those that are in between. It's not all black and white. It's lots of shades of gray.
Yep. I totally agree.
We're back to the grays again.
It can be a mixed bag. That's what I often hear. People will have some very scary experiences and healing experiences as well. So it can be really, I think, difficult for the experiencers to try to get a handle on what's happening with them, because it is good and bad.
Well, the other thing that is, and you mentioned this earlier about the humanoid or the very human-looking aliens, and one thing I question is, are they really human-looking? Because in a lot of cases, it's been reported that people are given screen memories, or that they can affect somebody's mind to make them see what they want them to see. Yeah, it may look like a gray alien. Why is suddenly everything gray aliens? Because that's what's popular right now. That's what people think about when you think of aliens. You think of little grays. When in some cases, I've heard of encounters where the beings will look one way, maybe even human, or maybe even something more humanoid, and then they've actually changed shape in front of the person to something a lot more alien. That was unexpected. There's my Mike Messenger's book. No, not Messenger. It's called The Messengers.
Yeah, Clellens.
Mike Clellens, yes, thank you. Which deals a lot with owl imagery and people having screen memories of owls, or seeing 4-foot owls standing in the middle of the road. Obviously, it's not an owl. It's either a screen memory, or they're able to shapeshift or project an image into your mind about what you're seeing.
Yeah. Once I went out into my backyard, tried to call down the UFOs, and one appeared. It was just a bright light. I'm like, wow, that's it? You can do better than that. And this owl came swooping down over my head.
Really?
That was a question I wanted to ask you, whether you see these people on the television in films calling to the UFOs. Does it really work? Obviously it does, because you say, you've done it.
Yeah, for sure. Stephen Greer formed a group, CSETI, Center for Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, where they use various techniques to call down UFOs. He came here to LA to speak and form an LA chapter. And I wasn't going to go. It cost like $300, but the newspaper called me, said, I don't know why we're doing this. We've never done this before since, but we're going to pay your way if you'll write an article. I'm like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And Stephen Greer started speaking, and he says, here's the best cases I could find on how to do it. The first case is by Preston Dennett. And I'm like, whoa, this is my case. Because, I had written an article about how to call down UFOs many years ago for UFO Universe magazine, where people just use lights to call them down.
Laser lights, laser pointers, I've heard, can be used. I know that up at the Gillian Ranch up in Washington, they do that a lot. They have people coming up there and using different techniques and lights and whatnot, trying to call on UFOs to come down and interact with people. And it happens a lot.
Yeah, they've got good footage. I've seen it.
There's a place in the San Luis Valley in Colorado called the UFO Watchtower, where people routinely gather because the San Luis Valley is a hotbed of UFO activity.
Yes, Judy Messeline. I think that's the first watchtower in the U.S. I hope there's more. But every state seems to have their hotspot, every location. Well, I know California does, Colorado, Arizona, New York.
Well, that's something I definitely wanted to bring up in this conversation, is the fact that we have these hotspots. And why do we have these hotspots? Why do we have these locations which seem to have the hotbed of UFO activity? And they're all over the place. I mean, off the coast of California and in Southern California, in the Nevada desert, to going all the way down into Arizona, hotspots. Out here in New Jersey, back in the 50s, there's this reservoir, the Wanacue Reservoir, where there were multiple sightings of UFOs over that reservoir in the 50s. And people have seen...
They seem to be all over the world, though, don't they?
They do, but there seems...
You've got the Brecon Beacons at the back of me.
But there are certain hot spots, and it's not just UFOs. And it's like what I learned in researching the paranormal, especially, I know several locations here in New Jersey which locations are paranormal hotspots. And it's not just quote-unquote hauntings. It's other types of phenomenon, which I feel is something to do with the land. Now, could it be ley lines? Could it be something else that's in the ground or something else that's living there? I mean, you hear about the underwater bases. There's also the supposed to underground bases. At Gillian Ranch was against Mount Rainier. There's supposed to be a base in there. They've seen UFOs flying in and out of the mountain. Your valley there in Wales, where you call it the UFO highway because you've seen so many things happening there.
Oh, yeah.
Plus you have ley lines running across your property.
Yeah,
I
think you hit on it. I think a lot of these areas might have bases, because I think that's true for the Santa Catalina area, and with Arizona and Sedona and the Superstition Mountains, a lot of rumors about a base there. Also in upstate New York, Hudson Valley area.
Yep, that was a big flap in the 1980s.
Yeah, a lot of people have heard stuff rumbling around underground. Stuff rising up from, below, not coming from above. So that could be a factor there.
There's supposed to be, on the American military side, what they call dumb bases, deep underground military bunkers. Dulce, New Mexico supposedly has one. There's supposedly one outside of Washington, D.C. These certain areas that the military have working for them underneath the Denver airport. Which that one I totally believe, because why in the hell they moved Denver Airport so far away out in the middle of nowhere away from the city when they had the airport right there in the city, and yet they have all these deep underground facilities that support the airport, and then there's more evidence of digging. People who've done some research out there, miles away, they're still like finding dirt deposits, whatever, because they're digging underground and continuing to burrow underground. So there's supposed to be a deep military base there. I mean, compared to what they did with Cheyenne Mountain, digging out of the mountain to that's just our military side. What are these ET races doing? And are they really extraterrestrial? Or are they from here? Maybe they've always been here. Maybe they've
been here longer. Yeah, they've been here longer than us, I think. Just judging from petroglyphs and hieroglyphs and pre-Columbian stone carvings, and yeah, they've been here a very long time. We know that. How long?
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long, but definitely since prehistory, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. There's a story in your book about a man working at Mainstream AFB. What's Mainstream AFB?
Yeah, there's a very well-known incident, Malmstrom in Montana, where UFOs hovered over this base where we have, nuclear-tipped missiles.
Oh, it's an Air Force base.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what AFB means.
I just clicked onto that one. Yeah, carry on, Preston.
In 1967, there was this very famous incident where UFOs came down, multiple objects, hovered low over several areas of the space, over the sites themselves, the actual missile sites, and shut them down. Not just one or two, but all of them. This was originally leaked by Robert Salas, a military officer, a captain, who was there. And now, of course, there's been a number of other whistleblowers, and one contacted me, Mel Hansen, and wanted to share his participation in this event, which occurred on March 16th, 1967. He was actually at one of the sites doing routine maintenance when one of these things showed up. This was at night. It was blocking out the stars, totally silent, very low. And the missile went offline. It has backup power, so it went up on backup power with a diesel generator, but then that shut down, and it went on to its backup, which is a battery powered, and then that went offline.
Yeah.
So it disabled 3 different power sources. Clearly not what the Air Force says it was, an accidental electrical tripping sort of thing where it just went offline due to an error. I think this was something that was purposefully done by the ETs.
Well, there's also the flip side of that. There's another famous case that happened in Russia where UFOs flew over a nuclear installation and started activating the warheads. And the Russians started flipping out, trying to shut them down because these UFOs came and started arming the warheads and getting them ready, almost like they were going to get ready to launch. And I think it was a display of power. They're showing that we can do this to you. We can shut you down. We could control it. You guys are powerless. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
They're all about nukes. This is the number one message beyond, don't be afraid. We won't hurt you. If ETs talk to a person, more than likely they're going to be warned about nuclear proliferation. They hover over anything nuclear. I've talked to several witnesses firsthand, like Dr. Gary Wagoner, who was stationed on the USS Long Beach, a guided missile cruiser, nuclear-powered. This is off the Catalina coast, actually. They had an encounter. Probably the most interesting was this guy I talked to, Ray Sachs is his name. He was an electrician's mate on the USS Klamagor. This is back in 1971. The Klamagor is a submarine with nuclear-tipped missiles. And they had a USO, this unidentified submersible object, track their submarine for 15 minutes. They were on the surface, but it followed right alongside them, very close, for a good 15 minutes. Came zooming in at over 100 knots, tracked them for 15 minutes, then zoomed off in another direction at like 80 knots. Definitely not another sub or anything. Completely freaked everyone on board out.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do about them, really, is there? Their technology is too far advanced.
Far in advance of our, I think that's the one thing.
We don't stand a chance.
No, that's, people disagree about where they are, where they're coming from, what their agenda is, but pretty much everyone who's ever had an encounter agrees that these guys are technologically far in advance of us.
Yeah, but can't we just get Jeff Goldblum to hack into a computer and we take them all down with an old 1990s Mac computer? That's the one thing I laugh at Hollywood is there's that change in Hollywood where back in the 50s and 60s it was always monsters and aliens from outer space as the bad guys. Then you have Spielberg comes along and with Close Encounters and E.T. starts a wave of more positive films. In fact, Close Encounters, I think, is still one of my favorite movies ever made because especially how accurate that movie is. And some of the themes that it dealt with in that movie, which now are very commonplace, government cover-up, that kind of thing, wasn't as well known back then. And he handled it masterfully. Again, it was a very super positive aspect of it, especially the ending of the movie. But, they looked at it as from a positive point of view until we start getting into the later 80s and then the 90s with frickin' Independence Day, which it all became again about alien invasions and aliens are evil and we're fighting them off and humanity comes together and we defeat the alien invasion. But it's, again, selling fear. And
well, we are a fear-based society, and I think there's a strong spin on this subject that's intentionally put out by the disinformation guys, the cover-up guys. I think that is sort of, they're trying to control our perception of who these ETs are. And I am not convinced they're here to hurt us. I'm really not. If they wanted to take over, we'd already be on their plates.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, if you even look at the works of Zecharia Sitchin with his research into the Anunnaki, the Sumerian culture, how the Anunnaki supposedly created humans, but we were a slave race. And they supposedly did control us back then. We were mining gold for them. And then until things changed, and then everything with different cultures as we go on, as we mentioned earlier in the program, there's lots of written accounts over our history of people having interactions with quote unquote gods. I'll say that with a small g, or angels or any of these types of beings that either bring messages or, just like they do today, perform what would be considered miracles or something with high technology. And kind of leading humanity in a down a certain path. And it's something that's happening over thousands of generations. So as for where we are now and the negativity now, I mean, there is some ufologists that feel that is a negative aspect or a negative race that has been controlling us for a while and is responsible for all the crap that's basically going on in our society today and how crazy everything is. But there's also a message of hope in there from some of them, that what we're dealing with right now is growing pains, or it's like the last desperate grasp that these controllers are having over humanity before they lose that grasp and we're able to advance to the next level.
I sure hope so, because it's clear there is a negative force on this planet. I mean, just looking at the unequal distribution of wealth and all the discrimination and divisiveness and, yeah, it's rough here. This is a rough planet, a very hard school.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to graduating, honestly.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm ready to shed this meat suit and go to another planet.
Oh, I'll help you there.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you would. So, Preston, is there any of the stories in your book? I mean, again, we don't want to cover too much of them. We want people to come and read the book. But is there any of the one something we haven't talked about yet that really strikes you, or is really strikes a chord with you?
You're asking me to choose between my babies, but yeah, I mean, I've got a few favorite. One case that really kind of I can't stop thinking about was this mother and son duo. She contacted me because of what happened to her teenage son. They had gone to the dentist, and
just looking at that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting case. This was she lives in Indiana, and it was around 2012. She took her son to the dentist for x-rays and cleaning, as she does, every year or so. And the dentist started freaking out. They had taken x-rays, and all the other dentists were coming in, and the assistants to look at these x-rays. And finally they call her into the office and point to these x-rays and said, "What the heck is this?" And she looks at the x-ray, and underneath her son's back molar tooth, on the left side, lower tooth, is this round, metallic-looking object. It's opaque in the x-ray. And they're like, "What's this?" She says, "I don't know. Maybe, I have no idea, an alien implant." She's just joking. And they kind of stare at her. She says, "Did your son shoot himself in the mouth with a BB gun?" Which he denied, so did she. That never happened. And they had no explanation for what this thing could be. It upset some of them pretty bad. I mean, one of the dental assistants had to leave the room. She was so upset by, looking at this x-ray. Because there was no entry wound.
Yeah.
And the tooth was fine.
Did they take it out?
Nope, they didn't. He was having his wisdom teeth removed, and the oral surgeon offered to, and he declined. And it's still there.
I would have said it could be worth a fortune down his press. If you get it out of your mouth, I think that's going to be worth a fortune. I would have definitely had it out. I wouldn't want this thing in my mouth. Got one in my head, but I don't want one in my mouth.
Well, he didn't want to have it removed. I mean, what? Because the tooth was fine. It wasn't hurting him.
Yeah. With a young healthy fella, I mean, that's a healthy tooth, so you don't want to take the tooth out to get this thing out, do you?
Right. But definitely freaked her out. She asked for the x-rays, took them home, studied them, started looking for any explanation for this. But there were none. There was just no way it was a BB. It's bigger than a BB anyway. I included the copies of x-rays in the book. And she began a long, long search to figure out what's going on here, and finally came upon the subject of aliens. She didn't want to go there, but she had no choice, and found out that this was not unique. Other people have reported this kind of thing. That's how she found me. Sent me the x-rays. I sent them to a couple of doctors, both who said the same thing. Like, did the son shoot himself in the mouth with a BB gun? And I said, "Well, no, there's no entry wound. It's bigger than a BB." No, he didn't. And they said, "Well, whatever it is, we would diagnose it as a foreign body. It looks metallic. It's perfectly round. And nothing natural about it."
Did he have any pain because of it?
Nope, no pain. He is an unusual child. He is very, very sensitive, very psychic. On a daily basis, we'll have precognition. Lots of synchronicities. People seem to be really drawn towards him. He's super, super sensitive. So I think that could be a factor here. He also says he's very, very interested in Nordic, human-looking ETs. I asked him, "Have you had or actually I asked her. He did not want to talk to me. He's just a 14-year-old boy. So I had his mother on the phone, and we're I'm asking about, any UFO history. She says, no, I've never seen one, and I know my son hasn't either. I'm like, really? Are you sure? She's like, I'm pretty sure. I'm like, well, you should ask him again. And while I was on the phone with her, she shouted out to him, have you seen a UFO? And he said, well, Mom, I didn't want to tell you, but yeah. And it was right before this whole thing went down. He had been walking outside with his friend, and these lights came swooping down, and then they flashed on more lights, colored lights, very low, maybe 100 feet high. So whenever someone has a sighting that's within a few hundred feet, that's a red flag for me, indicating possible actual contact. This is something I've come to realize, that when a UFO gets that close, there's very likely something going on here. So I think he probably was taken, had missing time, doesn't really remember it. But that's when this all started for him.
There are other aspects.
Am I still breaking up, Mark?
Just a little bit, yeah. I don't know what's changed, but yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
Those bloody aliens standing outside the window.
That's it. Tell those aliens to go away. Now off.
No, invite him in. Invite him in.
No.
Now you've cleared up.
I want a cup of tea later. I don't want them in here.
Why not? You could share a cup of tea and talk about Alpha Centauri.
Yeah. All right then.
All right.
I'll send them over to you.
Yeah, she's saying, Mark, just shut
Please
up.
do.
Would you really like one
Yeah,
to appear in front of you, Preston?
I really would. I'm not kidding. I'm ready.
I'm right there with you.
Okay, later.
But then here's the thing.
Really though.
You wonder how you would actually react, because it seems that most people who have the encounters, they don't react like they think they would. It's almost like they're either under control or their thoughts are being influenced in such a way that either they're not thinking clearly or they're often just not behaving not like themselves during one of these encounters. It's like a form of control, whether it's to keep the person calm, or I don't know, but there's just an element of high strangeness to it that these encounters don't even seem to be happening in the physical. Whether they're happening, somebody wakes up in their sleep and they are abducted, but maybe it's not their physical body that's going. There are cases where it's not the physical body; it's their astral self, their spirit, or however you want to call it, that goes up into the ship and interacts with these beings. And it seems all real at the time, but the body physically never leaves the bed. These people report actually coming back down and going back into their bodies. So it happens during an out-of-body experience. So again, it's things happening on a non-physical level. And especially if you start to think about these alien beings, where are they from? You know, some may be from different planets, different star systems. We seem to focus a lot on the Pleiades and the Orion star systems. That's where a majority of people who claim when they talk to these beings them from somewhere else that they seem to come from. But yet there's a lot of evidence that these things are very interdimensional and are traveling in and out of realities. Case in point with the Skinwalker Ranch, the original owners on the ranch had reported watching portals open up in the sky, and it'll be dusk, almost completely dark, and yet they see this portal open wide and wide, and there's a sunny blue sky on the other side as these craft fly through. So it's a different location, a different time, a different whatever coming in, or a different reality where these things are coming into our time and our space and our reality.
Yeah,
they're from the future.
Well, they can time travel.
Could be us.
They can time travel. They can move interdimensionally, but that doesn't preclude them from being extraterrestrial. I mean, if we have the whole crash retrieval phenomena, I think would be a game changer. I'm pretty sure it's real. We don't have the evidence available in the public arena, but we certainly have hundreds of whistleblower accounts. And if we can get our hands on the Roswell craft or any of these alien bodies, all bets are off. We know what this is. It's extraterrestrials. It's people like us. I really think that's the theory that best fits the evidence. And just because they can time travel or move interdimensionally doesn't preclude them from being ETs.
There are some theories that they're actually us from the future, traveling back in time to now. I've talked with some people who have actually been involved with and have knowledge of. We currently have a time travel program right now within, what do you want to call the breakaway, as Richard Dolan calls it, the breakaway civilization or the shadow government, however you want to call it, the Black Ops, MK Ultra, that they've had this high advanced technology that they keep from the public where they're able to not only use teleportation, but various forms of time travel. And if we can do it, then certainly they can do it.
Yeah, there's definitely a time aspect to this thing. There are a number of cases I think you could march out that would sort of point towards that possibility. I certainly wonder about it because they can take people to the future. I've got a number of cases like that, or stop time, I guess, or pull people out of the time stream somehow, and telescope time, and scrunch time. They can do all kinds of really incredible stuff. But I don't know. I'm not convinced they're necessarily us from the future. This is not what I'm hearing from contactees, generally speaking.
No. I think, and again, if there are, it's a small faction. I think there's a variety of beings that are visiting us. As far as time goes, one of the things we've talked about a lot on this show is the fact that even modern science is catching up with the idea through string theory that time is an illusion. All time is happening at once. It's just our perception of time that makes it linear, which is one of the ways that it's easy to travel back and forth in time because it's all happening at once. It's just our perception of it or the way we're programmed. There is a famous abductee, and this is the same person I talked about before, and I'm not mentioning their name because they're very controversial right now, who remembered having an encounter when he was a child with this blonde woman who comes up and talks to him, telling him he's special, and in his memory, and of course the memory came way later when he was an adult. I think it came under hypnotic regression, that it was a hybrid. And later, when he got older, it turned out it was one of his own hybrid children that they had created. And they made, for using his genetic material and this other woman's, they made these hybrid children that he was starting to interact with on certain levels. And other people were actually seeing them. One time at a conference, somebody saw this young girl come in and sit down, and she just looked weird and out of place. She had on this strange shirt, a strange necklace, and they took a photo of the side of her face, and her eyes seemed very wide and almond-shaped and slanted. But, you had to really look at it because otherwise it looked like a normal girl. And this is supposedly the same person that visited him when he was like 6 or 7 years old. But she was more of an adult then. So you see there is a time travel aspect to that.
Yep. I certainly wonder about it. Well, if these guys have a craft that can actually move, interdimensionally or faster than light, I mean, if they can collapse distance and move to places instantly across the universe, that affects time. I mean, there's that famous mathematical equation, rate times time equals distance. So if you can go anywhere instantly, I mean, that's collapsing time. You could travel into the past or the future then. And that would make total sense.
Well, plus the fact that by the theory of folding space, one of the reasons mainstream science refuses to believe, that we've been contacted by aliens from other planets is because the amount of time they think traveling sublight to get anywhere. And even if we could reach the speed of light, everything is so far away that it would take hundreds, if not thousands of years to traverse. But yet now in more recent years, the theory...
technology though, isn't it?
Well, the theory of folding space, creating that wormhole, creating that taking a flat plane of piece of paper, folding it in half, punch that hole through it, and that's what you're going through. You can travel instantaneously from one side of the universe to the other.
Yep. Well, they seem to be able to do that, so...
So, with the rest of the book, I mean, again, we want to save the rest of the stories for the book, and this just came out. You not only recount all of these stories, then you take the time at the end to revisit each one and adding your own thoughts to them and what you think may have happened, or at least what you could figure out. But it's a great book. I read the whole thing. I recommend if anybody to pick it up. In fact, several of your books are just very good and easy to read. I also am a big fan of your earlier book on board UFO Encounters. That's another good one.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite. Certainly one of my most popular. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love talking to people who've been taken on board. That's where you get the most information. I've got several cases like that in this latest one. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So even though this one is brand new, do you have your ideas for your next book laid out yet?
Yep. I'm.
Yes, of course he has. Going for the big 3-0, aren't you, Preston?
I am. I'm already working on it. You bet.
Are you getting the same spam call that I just almost got? Because I heard my phone started ringing and it was a spam call, and I hang up, and then 30 seconds later I hear your phone start to ring with the exact same ring as mine.
It could very well be. Yep.
Yeah, I don't need my auto warranty.
What are the? I'm messing up here, aren't I? I was going to say, what are the ideas for the next book, Preston?
Oh, I'm working on it already. I am interviewing this lady who has had lifelong experiences. She's what we would call a conscious contactee. She initially started with one experience, well, several, involving missing time. But at age 14, decided she's going to remember everything that's happening to her, and did. I'm interviewing her right now, so that's going to be the subject of my next book for sure.
Now, if you mentioned about going out and calling down ETs, is there a simple way you can explain that, or is it a little more complicated and people would need to read about it?
Mark is going to be in his backyard tonight shouting for ETs to come.
It's simple to do.
That's what he wants to know.
It's really just a matter of mentally calling out to them. They're very telepathic. If you want to see a UFO, it's just a matter of meditating a little bit, going out on a regular basis. You don't have to go drive off to the desert or anything. You can do this pretty much anywhere. I think it does help if you go to a hot spot or, into perhaps a more rural area, but I don't think that's necessary. People have done this. I mean, I've done it here in my home in Reseda, which is, there's 1 million people in the San Fernando Valley. So you can do this anywhere. It's about meditation, visualization, visualizing your location and sort of sending it out there, saying, I'm here. You can use flashlights, powerful flashlights, I think work better. I don't really recommend laser pointers because, first of all, they're illegal to point at aircraft. And I've talked to a few contactees who said that the ETs do not like them. Do not point your laser pointer at a UFO.
Just use a regular flashlight.
Yep. So it's just a matter of meditating, visualizing, mentally calling out to them, I'd like to see you, and flashing your flashlight perhaps. And it works. It absolutely works. We had a CSETI group here for 5 years. We would go out pretty regularly, and we had a number of really good sightings. In fact, I brought TV shows out to do it in the Santa Monica Mountains, and they came both times.
Wow.
Couldn't believe it. With Encounters and another show with the Learning Channel. And Encounters, they did catch it on film, but when the Learning Channel came, they were changing the cameras.
Figures. They know when that's going to happen, too.
Yeah, they so did. There was just no way that, because they're like, okay, we're going to change the cameras, and boom, these things come swooping down. Everyone's screaming.
I was
tonight, Mark. Are you going to be in your garden, laying on the patio suite?
I don't know. There might be rain tonight, so I don't know. We'll have to see. But
okay.
I was going to say, it's like, I could sit there and mentally project and meditate and ask them to come, or Irene, I can just tell you to send them over. You have that direct line.
Yeah, okay then. Do you know something? I've just been thinking about something that I done. I had a friend come to stay, and she was into UFOs and everything, and she had all her little cameras with her and everything. So I put her out on the patio, and I locked her out there and told her she wasn't allowed in until she got me a picture of one. And I left her out there for 2 hours in the middle of the winter. Oh, I'm wicked.
You're evil.
If you're listening, Karen, I'm sorry. I'm evil. I did throw her a blanket,
Oh, well, that was thoughtful.
Just sit down and call them and get me a photo, I said. And do you know something? She did.
Did you at least give her a hot cuppa?
Shape thing. Hmm?
Did you at least give her a hot cuppa?
No, she got a drink when she came back in.
Oh.
She had a bottle of wine.
Oh, okay.
Just recently I was on all TV shows, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. They called me. They wanted to call. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
To call down a UFO.
Yeah.
No, they were very nice.
Did it work for them?
It worked. Yeah. Yeah. They ran inside when it came swooping down, which I told them not to do. But
you should get with the Osbournes, since they with Jackson is into all that paranormal stuff.
Ozzy sees UFOs all the time. Well, I've been sitting here now. We've been talking, and something keeps touching me on the head 3 times in the last couple of minutes, in different parts of my head. Once on the side, and I've just had it on the top, and I've had it also on the back.
Well, they're trying to get your attention because you keep ignoring them.
No, I expect it's a fly or something.
Sure. You just keep telling yourself that.
After my cherries.
Well, we are coming up on the end of the show here. So, Preston, your book is called Wondrous, 25 True UFO Encounters. And that is available on Amazon in both Kindle and softcover format.
Yep, that's right. I also have a website. If you just use the search engine on my name, it should take you right there. I have a new YouTube channel, putting out my research there for people who don't want to read, just rather watch a video. So, yeah.
Oh, you're doing that as well? Oh, I'm going to watch that, Preston.
Hey, yeah, it's doing pretty well. I'm excited.
Well, good.
Just put Preston Dennett, double T on the end, into YouTube, and he'll come up, won't you?
Yep.
Yep, just found you. Oh, and I'm subscribed too.
As quick as that, see? Search.
Well, Preston, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is, as usual, this has been a lot of fun talking with you and going over all these cases, and we're definitely going to have you back on when the next book comes out.
Awesome. Yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And want to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And where can people find us, Irene?
Everywhere, people. Just start everywhere.
Everywhere, pretty much.
Amazon, Google. Everywhere. I can't think.
Everywhere
so
where
places,
podcasts,
so many platforms.
Everywhere where podcasts are posted.
Tunes up in the cloud.
Yeah. Plus on our website, our radio station, which plays on the Paranormal Radio app, and on our website at paranormalukradio.com. So, anyway, thank you, everyone, and we will catch you all next time. Everyone have a good evening, and we will talk with you soon. Have a good one. Say bye, Irene.
Bye.